So here's where we left off in our last lesson, and what we want to do is go ahead and build the tire object, and then we also want to go ahead and build the rim that we're just going to connect to the spokes. Okay, so the way I want to start this out is I want to actually use a standard primitive. So we'll go to the Create panel, make sure we're under Geometry and Standard Primitives, and we're going to use a torus. And a torus is pretty much like a donut, if you want to think of it that way. So let's go ahead and expand this out here, and we'll see that we get a radius here, and it may be a little large in your scene, so don't worry about that, because whenever you release, you can actually adjust the thickness of that tire. So what I'm going to do is just create part of this tire. It's pretty small at the top, and I'm going to click on that and finish creating that tire. Now what I want to do now is go ahead and convert this over to an editable piece of geometry. So I'm going to right click, convert to editable poly. And what I want to do at this point is go ahead and actually select some faces along the bottom and extrude the rim, or what's just above the rim, I guess the second part of our tire here. And so let's go ahead and go to our perspective view. Just hit P on the keyboard to do that. And I'm going to go to Edge Mode, and what I want to do is actually select like these two edges right here in the middle. And I'm going to go ahead and hit Ring, and that will select them all the way around. And what I can do is hold down Control and go to Polygon Mode, and that'll select all of those polygons in this object. Now I'm going to go ahead and extrude this. And when we do, you'll notice that we are extruding by the group, so it's going in an odd direction. So what we want to do is actually local normal. So now we get a kind of a rim like this. If this is a design that you're looking for, go ahead and go for it, but it's not exactly what I have in mind for me. So I'm just going to extrude this just a little bit, and then I'm going to actually apply and continue one more time just to give me another extrusion. So I'm going to extrude this just a little bit more, and then I'm going to hit OK. Now what I want to do at this point is actually scale this in, because this is actually kind of bubbling out because of our local normal. So I'm going to grab my scale tool, and with these polygons selected, just kind of scale these in a little bit. Okay, just to bring that back inside the tire. Okay. So what I've created is the actual tire itself and this little piece that's underneath the tire. Okay, so what we can do now is we can go ahead and take a look at this and check out our NURMs and see just how this is smoothing out, and make sure that we actually check NURMs there. And this is looking pretty good to me. And what I want to do now is actually build the rim object here. So I'm going to do this just the same way we did with the torus, except I'm going to use a tube instead. And the creation process is exactly the same as a torus. So we're going to go to the Geometry, Standard Primitives, and use a tube. So we'll click in here and we'll drag out a rough size of our rim. Now we're going to align these here in just a little bit, so I don't want you to try and get this perfect every single time. And we're just going to drag out about the width of our rim here, and then we're going to get a little bit of height, because this works just like a cylinder would. So you'll notice that our height is fluctuating. So we just want to get a rough height here, and then we'll just hit OK on that. So I'm just going to do like 2.5 here. So let's go to our perspective view. I'm going to hit P on the keyboard, and you'll notice that we've got a rim going here. So let's go ahead and actually move this on over and just kind of try to center this up on the wheel a little bit, just to get a rough idea of the thickness that we have on this rim. Now what I want to do here is I want to actually go ahead and start aligning my wheel and my rim and my spoke together. So I'm going to check my spoke here and just zoom in on this. And I'm just trying to make sure that my pivot is centered on my hub still, and it is. And I want to go ahead and select my rim, and what I want to do is use the Align tool and I'm going to align this to my spoke. So if I hit the spoke here, I'm going to do pivot point to pivot point, but actually I want to actually do center to center because my pivot point is off just a little bit. And you know what, let's go ahead and do pivot to pivot because the center point seems to be off on one of these objects. So we'll hit OK here. Let me actually go to perspective and just kind of check that out. And it is off. It's kind of off to the left here. So let's go ahead and just move this and just try to center it up the best that we can for right now. Actually, you know what? We can fix this really easy. Let's go ahead and move this rim way off of here just to get a better idea of how we can use this. First off, let's go ahead and select our rim, and we're going to go to the Hierarchy tab, and we're going to do Effect Pivot Only. And our pivot point on this is kind of off to the left side of our rim. It's not actually centered in this rim. And what we're going to do is hit Center to Object, and you'll see that pivot point kind of align a little bit better. We'll turn off Effect Pivot Only, and now our pivot point will stay right there in the center. So now let's go ahead and go to our Line tool and check our spoke, and we're going to do Pivot to Pivot, and we'll hit OK on that. So now if we go to our front view, that is on there pretty well. We'll go to our perspective, check that center, looking good. And now we're going to do the same thing for this wheel. We want to make sure that it's aligned as well. So we're going to do the alignment again, but we're going to go ahead and align this to our rim. Okay, so that kind of shifted just a little bit, so we did need that. So now this is looking really, really good here. Okay, so now let's go ahead and finish shaping our rim. And let's go ahead and apply some NURMS subdivisions to it. Now remember, we can't apply NURMS until we actually convert this over to an editable piece of geometry. So let's just right click on that, convert to editable poly. We'll use NURMS subdivisions. So this is getting smoothed out really nicely, but I do want this to be a little bit harder because this is kind of a hard surface here. So I'm going to go to my edges, and I'm going to go to my Edit Swift Loop tool, and I'm going to create a swift loop just underneath this edge segment on the corner. So that tightens that up really nicely. And we'll do this one. And I'm going to go ahead and do this around the bottom as well, but on the inside. Okay. There we go. So that is tightened up pretty well. And I'm going to just take a little bit of time here, and I'm going to scale this in just a little bit because I think this is just a little too thick. So let's grab our scale tool and scale this on the Y just a little bit. There we go, and that's looking pretty good. Now I don't want to go too far in because our spokes will start to interpenetrate and we'll get some weird results here. So I'm going to pull that out just a little bit. There we go. And that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead and deselect that. And what we've done is we've gone ahead and we've finished out the front wheel. We've created those spokes and reshaped those. We created a rim, and we also created the tire. Now what we could do at this point is go ahead and change those colors just to match the rest of our material. So I'm selecting both of those, and I'm just going to change this color to black because I want my wireframe to appear as black. Okay, now if I put a material on it, which I'm just going to use this gray material and assign that, so that'll appear as gray, and then we'll have that black wireframe. It just looks really nice and professional as you're modeling through this process. Now let's go ahead and actually show you how to group some objects together, because I think I've touched on that, but I haven't really gone in depth with it. So we have our spoke, we have our rim and our tire, and we want these to be all one object. Let's say if we were going to animate this, we want this wheel to be able to spin. So we're going to select all of those, and we're going to go to Group. And once we hit Group, we can give it a name. So we're going to say Front Wheel, and we want to be pretty descriptive on this. So I'm going to do front underscore wheel and hit OK. So now these objects will stay together. So whenever I select any piece of this, it selects all of those. So now if I want to, I could go ahead and rotate this wheel and give it any kind of shape that I'm looking for there. So, alright, so this is looking pretty good. And what we're going to do in the next lesson is we're going to go ahead and build out the